probably going to talk. So if you have questions, he'll get to those at the end. Darby, I don't know, are y'all if y'all are using chat, they can put the questions in chat and we can catch them that way. They don't forget them, and we'll let Benny answer all the questions when he's done, and then he may step out. But if you think of something later on, he'll be. He said he'd be available, so we'll just email him or get in touch with him. Y'all can let Roger or Darby know, and then we'll get with Benny and get those questions answered. So I'm going to step out of the way, and I'm going to turn the volume up a little bit for Benny, and I'm going to let him get in here. This you can advance right there, Benny. Click on that, and that'll go back, and that's probably the way to do it. Just put your eye on there, click on that. So they can see you and hear you now.
All right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I said I'm Benny Birdsong. I've been keeping bees for 40-something years now. I think as a kid, when in the spring of the year when the bees would swarm, I would take what we called a zinc bucket and beat on the bucket and make a lot of racket, and everybody thought that made the bees land. Of course, bees do that naturally, and bees don't hear, so they didn't hear all the racket I was making. But if somebody had told me then that I could sit here in a comfortable chair and look at a computer screen and talk all over the world, I'd have thought, man, you crazy, But anyway, I love to talk about bees, so we'll get started. There's a lot of writing in here, and I'm not going to read that. I'll just talk through it. Is this where that they can click on it at other times and look at it?
We're going to record, Darby, you're recording these, right? So they'll be able to go back and view the recording.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. But we're gonna look at the first of all, look at a little bit at the history of bees, a little bit of the value of bees and the biology of bees, and I'll Lord only knows what I'm allowed to talk about before we get through. So we'll get started. But first, look at a little bit of the history. The honeybees have been around for thousands of years. There's drawings on walls in caves that go back to over 4,000 years. So bees have been around a long time. I saw the drawings where they're actually smoking the bees way back then, because they didn't have the smokers that we have, but all that goes way back. And of course, in those days, about the only sweetener that people had was honey. So it was kind of a valued commodity, and the kings and all them people, they had the honey, and the poor people didn't have all that much. Before the 1850s, I'm sorry, the colonies were pretty much destroyed when the honey was harvested, and so long in the early 1800s, they started doing what's called the bee gums, and this was a hollowed out log, and it would sit on something. They'd put a top on it, and of course, put the bees in it. And like I said, they pretty much destroyed the colony. When they harvested the honey. Along about 1850s, this man Lorenzo Langstroth came up with what we know today as bee space. And bee space is about 5/16 of an inch. If it's less than a quarter of an inch, the honeybees will gum it up. If it's over 3/8 of an inch, they'll put some kind of cone in it. So they try to maintain the 5/16 inch bee space in the hive. Of course, all of this brought on the removable frame. This is a picture of just a frame, and kind of like what you would want your frames to look like. See the brood in the middle of the bees around it, where the bees are around toward the top of the brood. This is where the pollen is, and of course you can see the capped honey in the top. But that's what we, the type frames that we use today. The bill smoker was, after the reusable frames were developed. They came up with the smokers, and then they came up with the honey extractors and the tanks and all the stuff that we have that makes beekeeping easy today. This is just a picture of some old smokers, and there's some weird looking beads in there if you know what we use today, because this is the imprinted foundation. Was a great advancement in its day. The honey extractor, you can see we just dropped, there's all kinds of versions of these. This particular one is a full frame. You have some that are plastic and just 2 frames and don't cost very much. And a beginner beekeeper, you know, it's something like that's all you need to get started. The honey tanks that we use is just a plastic bucket, and I'm talking about the backyard beekeeper. And it's just what I use. Just have the plastic bucket with the gate valve at the bottom, and you use a strainer like this to strain it from the extractor into the bucket and let it settle and drain it out into a jar, and you got just 100% natural raw honey. Nothing done to it except it's just been strained. Mentioned the honeybees are not native to the U.S. They were brought over from Europe in the 1600s. The Indians called the honeybees the white man's flies back in those days. There's all kind of versions of hives, and we'll look at them. The picture here to the left shows them hollering out that's probably sweet gum. They hollered out to make the gum, and put from the picture on the right. Sometimes the bees have their own ideas, and a lot of times I have come across frames just on limbs. You know, they're passing the honeycomb on limbs, and they go at it. This is the old skip, we call it, and up here around the top, this is made to come off. You can see here's the hole where they go in and out. And you could take the top off and you could get the honey out. You didn't have to completely destroy it, but you really disturbed it when you got it like that. You're just going to dig it out. But this is I really like this picture. This is some of them old time bee gums, and you can see some of them are logs. That one's sitting on a wash tub in a little stand, and this is just some boards nailed together with some kind of top on it. I mean, this was, beekeeping in its earliest stages. The hives that we use today we call Langstroth, and because this is patterned after Lorenzo Langstroth. I think he was a Methodist minister, I believe he was, but he was a minister. But anyway, this now there's several versions, and we'll look at some, but this is the most widely used is the Langstroth hive. Of course, you see at the top is the outer cover, the inner cover, and then there's the 2 honey supers. There's in between them is a queen excluder, and I tell you right now, a lot of people use queen excluders. I don't like the things. It causes the bees to have to squeeze through them, and I think it cuts down considerably on honey production. But anyway, a lot of people use them. And then of course the bottom is the hive body. Normally we will have 2 hive bodies. Those are the deep supers or hive bodies. And this is kind of what we need in our part of the world, to get the bees through the winter. The bees will need about 60 pounds of honey to get through the winter. And so this is each frame will hold about 10 pounds of honey. And so if you got 20 frames, then that's and you have half of them full, that would be your 60 pounds. Of course, you won't have a super completely full because you have the room for the bees in it. And then there's the bottom board, and then this is showing a hive stand. So a lot of people use them, a lot of people don't. But that's kind of the setup that we use. This is Langstroth's first version, if you would, of a hive, and this had those removable frames. And I've looked at these things hundreds of times, and I ain't never figured out how it works. But anyway, and this is Langstroth. So This is, because again, yeah, this is the Langstroth hive. But this kind of shows you a picture. This is what you want your bees to look like. When you have bees, you pull a frame up and look at it. And if you can see in here, you see the brood in there, and then you have you have it pretty well covered up with bees. But that's kind of what you want your frames to look like. This is, and I don't ever pronounce this right, but it's a Wari hive, I think is what it's called. And you can see these, it doesn't have, you can remove these things, but it doesn't have the removable frames. You can remove them, but you see the little V there, and of course you try to put some wax or a little piece of foundation on there, and hopefully the bees will build it and it will go straight down. And this is just a really simple, and you can see that what you got there, that's just 4 boards nailed together. You know, there's not much to it. And of course, there's a picture of it over here. This is called the top bar hive. These have been used in Europe for a lot of years. I don't much like the top bar hive, and the reason I don't much like it, you can see these pictures here. The foundation is attached pretty much like the warrior hive, except see this is I mean this is a natural way that bees kind of build their out like on a limb. You know, if you see it, be kind of built like that. For the most part, they won't attach it to the side, so you can get this out anytime you want to. But you can see some places here where they have attached it. But the bad part of this is that you can't sling this out in an extractor. You have to mash it out or squeeze it out, which destroys your cone if you do that. So I never much like that. This is a picture of a frame. This is what it looks like when you pull it out. This is great if you're doing cone honey, where you can cut you out a piece and put it in the jar. You know, this is great for that. This is a long hive or horizontal hive, whatever you want to call it. And this is something that's just come into effect in the past few years. This happened to be one that I built that I headed home. And what I like about this is that you can use the Langstroth frames in it. And you can see it's this one, I think it was 5 foot long, I believe. But you can see the entrance here where the bees go in. There's another one back here. So if you get this filled up, that you can open this up back here, and the bees won't have to come all the way back up here to come out. So, and then this right here, let's throw this in here. This is a package swarm of bees, and it's like a 3-pound package. Is about maybe 13,000 bees. And this right here is where I emptied a package of bees into the hive, this long hive. The queen cage is here in the middle of this, and when you get a package of bees, you have a queen in a little cage, and she'll have like 3 or 4 bees in there to take care of her. And you just hang it in there and pour the bees over, and they'll let her out in maybe about 3 days. Another thing, and I'm gonna have to take a swallow of water, I get dry. Another thing about the long hive, if you see this right here, this is what's called a follower board. And see, it fits up tight against both sides. Supposedly bees aren't able to get by there, but if a few do, it's not no big thing. But if you know, and the bees will have their brood where they come in. So if you notice when we looked at this, you know, the entrance was back over here, of course, down to the bottom. But they come in, so they'll have their brood here, and then they will put their honey on down this way. Well, as this fills up, you can just move this follower board down and add whatever frames you need to add. Another thing that I like about this is if the bees get down here somewhere, if the queen bee comes down here and lays eggs, and you have brood down here, you just simply pull it out and put it back up here and amongst the brood. And so like the Langstroth, where we have the honey supers, and if she goes up into the honey super, then that's a little bit of a problem. Look just real quick at the value of bees, and okay, I'm kind of keep an eye on the time. I think the honeybees was quickly recognized as good pollinators, and I think I got this information with the University of Michigan, is where this came from, but this is about 130 food crops in the U.S., and 70% of those need to be pollinated, and honeybees do about 80% of the pollinating. Yeah, like a third of our food is credited to the pollination from honeybees. So like one out of every 3 spoonfuls that you put in your mouth, you can credit to the honeybee. If it wasn't for the honeybee, the U.S. farmer couldn't produce enough food to feed everybody. So, and honeybees are excellent pollinators, and one of the reasons is, like if they're gathering their nectar from the apple tree, that's all they're going to work is that apple tree. They're not going to do a little bit on apple tree and then go out in the clover field and gather some. It's all from the apple tree. So this makes them really efficient as pollinators. The value of the honeybee to the agricultural industry, and this is probably more now, but this is a couple of years ago, I think, that I did this, it was $26 billion per year to our U.S. economy, to value just from honeybee pollination. And of course, this is the cost of increased production because of the pollination. So you think about, where would we be without the honeybee? Look at the biology of honeybees right quick. Of course, you see this is the worker, the drone, and the queen. You can see the queen is the bigger of the 3 bees. The drone, he's of course more stocky, and of course the poor little worker, the little bitty old thing, and she is just what they say. She's the worker. The queen bee, you can see on her back here is a white dot, because we use white and blue and red. And the thing, if you got a hive that's got, say, 60, 70, 75,000 bees, sometimes hard to find the queen. But if she's got that dot on her back and crawling around in there, you can spot that right quick. Normally there's only 1 queen per hive. There has been occasions where people have had 2 in a hive. I've never saw 2 in a hive. But about a week after the queen comes out of her cell, she will go on a mating flight. We'll talk about the drone in a minute, but she will will fly about 18 feet above the ground, and she will mate with as many as maybe 15 to 20 drones. She has a sac, and it's got a name, and I can't never remember what it is to pronounce it, but what it is a sperm sac. And when that sac is full, she will go back into the hive, and she won't leave the hive again unless she swarms. It would be the only reason that she would leave the hive. The queen has said that she can lay as many as 2,500 eggs a day. That looks awful busy to me, but this time of the year, now starting February and March, is when the hive is building up. And they will go down, the average hive probably won't have over maybe 30,000 bees in it now, maybe not that many. But by the end of March or 1st of April, you want that hive to have, like 60, 70,000 bees, and that makes it an efficient hive. So right now, she is laying all that she can to build that hive up. Any fertilized egg that she lays can become a queen. That we have the bee milk, we call it royal jelly. But they will feed that bee milk to the larva for the full 15 days, and after about 15 days, the queen will emerge. I think the worker bee, I think it takes maybe 21 days, and the drone bee, it takes like 24 days, I believe. But they are, they're fed the bee milk or the royal jelly for about 6 days or something, and then the rest of their time in the cell is with what's called bee bread, or the pollen, mixture of pollen and honey that they will live off of until they emerge from their cell. All right, quick look at some swarm cells, and because your swarm cell is always on the bottom of your frame, and you can see there's two here, and both of them are capped. Uh, and if you, while we're looking at this, you can see right here is the brood, but you see all of these raised ones up scattered around everywhere. That's drone eggs, drone cells. So if she's laying all these drone cells around, then she's lost her efficiency. So they go to, so she's going to swarm. Now, if you go into a hive and you got swarm cells in it, and those swarm cells have not been capped, you can tear them out and do what you want to about replacing the queen. But if those swarm cells are capped, you best leave them alone, because more than likely, once they're capped, the hive is going to swarm. And so if you tie out the swarm cells and then she goes ahead and swarms, then you're left without a queen. So you best keep an eye on you every week, and if you find them that are not capped, then tear them out if that's what you want to do. This is what's called a superseding cell. These cells are always up in the center of your frame, and you can see there's two of them here with their capped. You don't tear out the superseding cells. The bees are going to replace their queen themselves. They're not going to swarm 2 or 3 days or 4 or 5 days or something before these queen emerges. They will get the old queen and they will kill her. And then whichever one of these queens emerge first will sting the other one and kill it. And then in a few days she will go on a mating flight, and she will mate, come back and start laying. This is just a picture of a swarm, and I think this is a swarm that I caught down here somewhere south of town one year. But it's that kind of shows you what a swarm looks like hanging in a tree. This is the old drone. You have a few hundred of them in a hive. Again, the drone is a lot more stocky looking than the worker bee is. You can see his eyes all across the top of his head. A drone can see all the way around him. He can see forward, backwards, and of course that's his design. He thought that was for when he's flying up in his fly zone, we call it. That he can look all around. Of course, when the queen is in that fly zone, she puts out a scent, and then he searches for her, and hopefully they mate. So, they say you can have several hundred drones in a cell. In a frame. Well, I'll get right in a minute. In a hive. All the drone is fit for is to mate with the queen. The drone doesn't even have a stinger. He can't feed himself. He can't take care of himself or nothing. He just mates with the queen. If he mates, he dies. All of his male parts are pulled out, and he falls to the ground dead. And like I said, he would fly at about 18 feet looking for the queen. If he don't find a queen to mate with, he will fly himself to death in about 6 weeks. And if he don't fly himself to death or mate, then after the first freeze, the workers will put all their drones out, because there's not going to be any mating going on during the winter, so they put them out and they'll die. So any drone that you see, is less than 2 months old. So, and this is the worker bee. Tell a little bit about her. And of course, you can see in this particular picture is a pollen, on her. These are on her legs. These are hair that's on her leg. You call them pollen baskets. But and you could have 60, 70, 80, maybe even up to 100,000 bees in a big hive. You can have a lot of worker bees in it. And the worker bee is just what she says. She's the worker. They do all the work in the hive. The only thing that anybody else does in the hive is the queen that lays the eggs. But the worker bees, because they clean the queen, the feeder, because they build the comb, they clean out the cells after the after they emerge from the cells. This is one of their first jobs, is to clean out their cell. And of course they feed the older larvae. Then as they get a little older, they feed the younger larvae. Picture here in a minute. We'll look at the wax. But they guard the hive. They collect the nectar. They collect the pollen. The porpoise, the glue that they glue everything up with. And of course, the important thing, they make the honey. So and this is just a picture of the front of a hive. You can see a bee coming in here, but you see these guys that's back in here that's looking out, and these are the guard bees. And if you try to get in there and you don't have pollen on your legs, or you don't have nectar to take in, they won't let you in. You have each colony has a little different scent. Now, if you're from another colony and you come in here loaded down with pollen, they'll let you come in and unload, but they're not going to let you come in and get something and take it out. So they're pretty, they watch that pretty good. And again, here's some the pollen on the legs and what we call the basket. This is just not a very good picture, but a picture of the nurse bees, and you can see that they're feeding the larva. This is one of the jobs that they have, is being nurses. This is a picture of a brood, and you can see some of them here are partially capped, and after they get so far along, they will finish filling up the cell with the with the bee bread, and they'll cap it, and then after a while the bee will come out in 21 days. Well, from the time they cap it, about 15 days, but they will come out. This is a picture of pollen, and sometimes you will look in your hive. Sometimes you may have a frame that just has a whole bunch of pollen in it. Maybe all these different colors, and of course the colors is determined by the plant that they collect the pollen from. You can see in this frame, this is just you can see the liquid, the honey, and the bees will, as the nectar comes into the hive, is probably 60% water or moisture, and they will store it, move it around, and buzz over it with the wings, and whatever they do, they add some enzymes to it. But and when they get it down to about 18%, they will cap it. If it's like 21%, it will ferment and will run, but they won't cap it till it's down to about 18%. So in collecting your honey, harvesting your honey, you be careful and watch that. And if you got more uncapped cells than you do capped cells, it's not a good idea to take it out. And this is we talked a while ago about the beeswax. This is under the abdomen of the worker bee, and you can even see the stinger there at the back. But these little bitty flakes, and I mean, these are little tiny flakes that they put out, and they collect them flakes, and that's what they make the all of the cone and the cap and everything that they do in their hive. A good way to learn to be a beekeeper is to attach yourself to a beekeeper. And all of the counties around us have beekeeping clubs or associations or whatever. In Lawrenceburg, you have the Lawrence Wayne, and in Murray County, you have, I think in Murray County, I forgot the name of the club, but they have one in Marshall County, have one in Lincoln County, in Alabama, and Limestone, and Madison. They have clubs. I think you contact your extension officers, and I think I can tell you, how to get in touch with the club in their county. Let's see. Well, this is just kind of talking about, the importance of bees. If you woke up one morning and you didn't have no bees, what would it be like to have, say, a third less of the food that you would have, in your part of the world. And so this is kind of to make you understand the importance of honeybees, the importance of backyard beekeepers. Every hive that you have, adds to the pollination, the collecting. If you have a hive and it swarms and you catch it, then you got another hive. If it don't swarm, it goes out in the wild, and you just add to all the bees out there. The cost of getting started. This is going to be probably a little bit cheap, or probably it's a little bit more now. But if you for one hive is maybe $450 to $500. And then, of course, if you have the second hive, and I recommend you have two hives, but then you can kind of compare. And if one of them is not doing good, you can kind of pick that up and look, and one is doing good and one's not. But of course, if you add the second hive, it's not as expensive as getting started with the first hive, because you don't have to buy, your smoke and your gloves and your veil and all that. This is a picture that I got down close to where I live. And this was up in a little old tree, and didn't anybody know that it was there until the leaves started falling off, and then there it was. But there's bees, and of course, let me go one more. And so you can see the bees up in here, and they were just working away. So they do their own thing. So something that I didn't have a slide on, but just mention right quick is bee books, books for beginners. There's a lot of good books out there, like and the University of Tennessee has got one of the better ones, and it's called Beekeeping in Tennessee. Of course, your extension officer can get it for you, or they can give you the link and you can download it. If you get, they used to be $10. I don't know what they are now, but you can download it for free, and of course you could even print it off if you wanted to. But it tells about beekeeping in Tennessee. It has a timetable what you should be doing each month as you go through the year. So it's a really good book. There's other books. It's called Beekeeping for Dummies. is a really good book. It's written by a beekeeper. There's one, I believe, is a backyard beekeeper. Is a good book. If you're going to buy books, kind of check on the author and make sure that the author is a beekeeper. I know a lot of books is out there that people will go to bee clubs and meet with them, get all the information you can, and then wind up writing a book. I knew a guy one time that wrote articles for one of the magazines, and he didn't even have any bees. So kind of be sure of what you're getting if you go to buy your book. All right, that's about all I have. I reckon I've really, asking me if I want to talk about bees, about like asking a kid for a piece of candy. So I'm always glad to do that. And I don't know where questions are, if you have any. So y'all tell me what I need to do. So.
Hi, Mr. Birdsong. We do have a question. Michael was asking about the new queen flying off to mate, flying out of her nest to mate, and then coming back in, and just curious if that was right.
Oh, that's correct. They will fly, mate, and then they will come back, and probably 99% of them will find their way back to their hive. Now, occasionally one may not come back, but most of them, when they mate, they come back to their hive. And then, just in 3 or 4 days, probably after they get back there, start laying. Anybody else?
I have a question. I grew up raising bees, and we always called, the things we slid in there gums. Is that any reference to what the trees they used to use when they'd make those hollowed out trees?
The time was that they had the bee gums was actually old logs, and they were made from sweet gum trees. I guess maybe the reason they're called gum. but they hollered them out. But a lot of the old people, and that's not saying that I'm young by any means, but they grew up calling them big gums. Even the Langstroth hives, they still call big gums. So and I think that term comes from the old log gums that we had.
Was Here's a question from Denise. Does the hive ever split off and make a new hive?
That's when they swarm, and of course, this is the way that they keep, what you call it, increasing themselves. A queen normally is efficient in her laying for a couple of years, and maybe she would have a colony of, say, 70,000 bees. If they swarm, about half of the bees will go with them. So she will take, it's because the old queen is the one that swarms. She will take like 35,000 bees with her, and then that will leave 35,000, in the colony for the new queen. But then all she's got to lay eggs for is enough to keep her new, or 35,000, strong, and she can do that for maybe another year. But that's and now, as far as if you wanted to split a hive, you can take a good strong hive in the spring and get you can order queens. You can get a queen and take 2 or 3 or 4 frames out. Take out a frame or 2 with brood in it, a frame with honey in it, a frame that's got pollen and stuff in it, and put in another hive and put it to, of course you have to take bees with you, but and then put the new queen in there, and you can just split the hive yourself, and people do that quite often.
Now, if you were to split a hive like that, would it reduce your amount of swarming you get in your spring of the year?
If you split the hive, you almost do away with the swarming. Yeah. And because something else that you do if you split the hive is you reduce your honey harvest, but then you still will get honey off of your old hive. You probably won't get any off the new hive, but you still be able to get a lot smarter honey. But you have got another hive, and next year you maybe get 100 pounds off of it. So, yeah. And that's why if you on an average during the winter months, we will lose about 1/3 of our bees. In other words, if you got 10 hives, it's not at all unusual to lose like 3 of those hives. So in order to build back up, this is what a lot of people do, is they will split a hive and to get back to their 10 hives. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, like Kevin told you, because I'm not hard to get. Go ahead.
We got one more question. Are there, Lisa wants to know, are there any warning signs before a swarm?
Not that much. A lot of times and this is too late, but a lot of times you will see the bees will come. Be a lot of them come out on the front of the hive, maybe for a day or 2 or 3 before they actually swarm. But it's too late then. They're going to swarm. Now the warning signs inside the hive. We looked at that frame that had the drone cells in it. If you're looking at your frames in there, your frame should be almost full of brood cells. The little flat cells, and if there's a lot of scattered places where there's not any brood, then that's a sign that the queen is losing her efficiency. So if you see that kind of stuff. And again, this is, if you get with a beekeeper and you get in a hive, to sit here and talk about it don't mean much, but to get in a hive and look at it and let people show you, then you understand a lot more what I'm talking about. But if you see that, that's the time to replace your queen.
Sounds good. we had one last comment, and that was just Denise saying thank you for talking tonight, and I'll say thank you too for coming and talking to us.
Like I said, anything I can do, I think probably half of the people in the country, I think, got my cell phone number. But if anybody needs to talk, y'all can get them in touch with me. You can email me. Darby and Kevin has both my phone number and my email. So, and I'm just glad to help any way I can. So, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good job.
Thank you, Benny. In the chat, I put a link to the Tennessee Department of Ag apiary site or bee site that has where you can register your hives, or if you have issues, if you have Africanized bees or think that you do, or if you think that you have American foul brood, you've got to let them know, and it's got some other information on there. So that's a little handy link if you think that you're going to get into bees. All hives are